Hey guys, Travis here.
And the Freak Joe.
And we are hitting probably the largest cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. Crown Hill Cemetery, right off of 32nd Street. Actually, it's off of multiple different streets because it's one of the biggest cemeteries in Indiana.
Yeah, but the main entrance, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Crown Hill Cemetery was dedicated on June 1st of 1864. And the first burial was of the body of Lucy Ann Seaton, who was 33 years old, a young mother who died of consumption, which you may also know as tuberculosis. Later that year, James Pattison built a stone gateway for $2,300 at the cemetery's west entrance off of Michigan Road. And, it's all been uphill from there. It's all been Crown Hill from there.
Yeah. What you guys are seeing here, this is actually going to be a two-part series episode kind of thing, because of how much there was to see at the cemetery. In part one here, we're looking at the Pioneer Cemetery. The Crown Hills Pioneer Cemetery was established on the north grounds around 1912. The bodies of 1,160 early settlers from Greenlawn Cemetery were moved to this new section at Crown Hill. The remains of 33 people from Rhodes Cemetery, established on the city's west side in 1844, were interred in the Pioneer Cemetery in 1999. And then finally, bodies from the White Cell Gentry Cemetery, located near Castleton, on the east side of Indianapolis, were moved to the Pioneer Cemetery between 2008 and 2009. And what Joe was able to catch on footage here is the memorial of all three cemeteries and the people who were moved here.
Yeah, so these large stones describe who was moved here, why they were moved here, where they were buried before, and just a fascinating and informative history of this area. It's really interesting the way they were able to combine these three different cemeteries into one smaller cemetery as part of the overall Crown Hill Cemetery, I guess, complex? Campus? I'm not sure what the word should be.
Campus works. Campus is nice.
Yeah.
One thing you're going to see too when Joe gets footage of the back of the stones is two of them are kind of like a diagram of where each person is buried as far as in this general area. And obviously, by the looks of the area that we're in, there's now 1,100 plus people buried in this area. So on the Green Lawn Cemetery side of it, you're going to see the list of the names of people who were brought over here. But on the other two, as far as the Wright Gentry Cemetery and the Rhodes Cemetery, they're going to kind of diagram where they're buried in the very location that we're at right now. And it's pretty cool. It's unfortunate that some of them were unknown, but it's cool that they're able to retain the names of the people buried there even after 1821 and so forth.
Yeah, I think it's really special that they were able to preserve that history, that information. And one of the things I always think about as we do cemetery tours is the idea in some cultures of two deaths, right? Your first death is when you physically die, and your second death or the final death are when you're forgotten. Mm-hmm. And so by holding on to these names and transporting these groups of pioneers into these new areas, these people are able to be remembered for longer. In a way, they continue to live on because they've been preserved. They are not yet forgotten. So I think that's really a really important thing with cemeteries and with honoring the pioneers of our country.
Yeah, and it's cool because I didn't really think about it till as you're talking, as we're looking at this, is all these people were buried in three different cemeteries around Indianapolis itself. It wasn't around the state, just around Indianapolis. So there were people who could have been buried in different cemeteries who probably actually knew each other from different towns. And I mean, these are the settlers of this area, and to have them buried collectively in probably one of the nicest cemeteries we ever did this in. It shows a lot of respect for those from the 1800s and so forth.
Yeah.
One of the things I wasn't quite sure of, though, is I'm wondering if these were brought from the previous burial or if they were made for this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I suspect they were made for this, especially in the section there of the Rhodes Cemetery. All of the stones look like they're made of the same material, which means they were probably produced at the same time. And not all of them had names. You notice that some of them were numbers and letters in the ground. And those correspond to the diagram on the back of the large gravestone, I guess you could call it. Yeah, and so I don't know that... I don't know. It could be that they were fabricated to look the same, or it could be that they actually were all made at the same time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure these probably were brought over.
Oh, yeah.
These are the dated ones.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the markers and everything, that I'm not quite sure of.
Right.
But, I mean, it's pretty cool that they were able to, see what they can. And honestly, even from, how old they were and everything, obviously with the writing being faded away, but the structure of some of them are still there.
Right. And, of course, one of the things that we read on the larger memorial stones is that these are only 3 of the cemeteries that have been relocated. There's another one we'll see in the second video that contains the remains of, what was it? Something like, I don't know, several. Quite a few Confederate soldiers and other Civil War veterans, I guess. Casualties? I'm not sure. Regardless, they were moved to a place to be together by the rest of the Civil War memorials.
So after we had a chance to check out the Pioneer area and everything, we were taking a chance kind of going through and look at some of the more older stones in the areas, obviously where we're at right now. But we're actually heading to locate the grave of John Dillinger.
Yeah, one of the most famous people buried in the cemetery. Of course, Dillinger was one of the gangsters that ran around with Capone, I think. Or was he separate?
I think.
Why am I confusing them? I feel so silly confusing them. But I definitely am, right? Dillinger was a bank robber, right?
Dillinger was a bank robber. I mean, it was the same era of the same shit going on. But Capone was obviously in Chicago. Dillinger obviously in Indiana and everything. But yeah, he's buried in this cemetery right next to some family members and everything. And while we walk around and check out all these different stones, and I mean, just the age of the stones are phenomenal because, I mean, you look at all the older dates, but they're still in pretty great condition. I don't see these as being ones that were replaced, but actually just kind of well kept.
Absolutely.
And you can see, I mean, even when we were there, and this was like first thing in the morning, this was probably like 8, 9 in the morning that we went and did this. There were already people out there working. We had gardeners cleaning up areas, people working on mausoleums and stuff like that. So, This one is pretty well kept, and just try to look nice as possible, and it definitely shows as we go through here and see all these amazing cemetery plots.
For sure. And one of the other things that I noticed as we were walking around was people use this area for recreation. They walk their dogs, they run, they jog. They just generally, I think there were some bikers. They walk around and use it much like a public park in a lot of ways, which, like I mentioned in an earlier video of this series, that's what cemeteries were used for a really long time. It was very popular for people to have parties and picnics and things in cemeteries, and Crown Hill is no exception. By the mid-1800s, Crown Hill was a burial ground as well as a popular location for recreational activities such as picnics, strolls, and carriage rides. It's well known for its views of downtown Indianapolis from the Crown, which was a hotel. In addition to developing the cemetery grounds, Crown Hill's incorporators built new structures on the site. A Gothic chapel and vault, which we saw as we entered the seminary, were erected in 1875. And the main entrance was moved to 34th Street on the cemetery's east side, which I think we'll see in a later video, where the waiting station building and this was the where I entered, the three-arched gateway in 1885. So maybe we'll see it as we exit or in the next video.
The Gothic Chapel, I believe, will be in the next episode. I think we went past it when we went to go look for President Harrison's burial area.
That sounds right.
But the architecture on this is phenomenal. Obviously, there's a lot of work and effort that was put into making this as pretty as possible. I guess if you want to consider a cemetery being pretty, but like you mentioned, they took carriage rides and picnics and everything in this area. Obviously, back in the 1800s, it wasn't as filled with markers and stones that that it is today. But knowing the fact that where these stones are, at one point people were having picnics and enjoying time with their families and everything, is actually a pretty cool thing to kind of think about.
Yeah, and one thing I think is also interesting is as we were reading the plaque, as I was reading the plaques, as we were walking through the cemetery, we did find that there is a plan for this cemetery to be in use for another couple hundred years, based on the number of people who are dying and the size of the city and the area of that is encompassed by this service, I guess.
This was one of the areas I was actually kind of curious about, because you see a lot more rounded off, like cylinder-esque kind of stones.
Yeah, and it's interesting because some of them are shaped like logs laying on their sides. Actually, all of these are right here, with like a scroll over the top, but clearly not in the same style as the other woodsman ones, so it must have just been something that this particular family or group of people thought was cool.
Damn. If you guys are wondering why I'm all the way over there in that direction, we were trying to search for Dillinger. I know I found the actual sections and lots and everything for where he's supposed to be, but it wasn't really that helpful, since they all kind of looked very similar. And then luckily Joey found. I think we found it simultaneously.
Yeah, I think you're right. But it is such a massive cemetery that we just I feel really lucky we were able to find it, to be honest.
Yeah, and the thing too is like, you know, like I'm sitting here looking at pictures and everything. There's again the pennies on John Dillinger's actual stone, but it was you know, I'm looking at pictures trying to say, okay, this is the overall stone. These are the ones in the back, and it's just amazing how similar that is to a lot of other spots. You know, you got one major stone that shows the last name of the family, and then the individuals next to it.
Yeah, and I do feel like it would be easier to find if it said Dillinger on both sides of the large stone. But as you noticed, maybe it's blank on the side that the family is actually laid to rest on, and then says Dillinger on the other side. So, and I believe he was John Dillinger Jr.
Yeah. So Senior was the father, obviously, as you're showing them right here, and then next to them is, I believe, his mother. But yeah, we had a chance to go to John Dillinger's grave, so it was pretty cool. As we're wrapping up the video, I just want to remind all you guys that if you get a chance to, please subscribe, hit the notification bell on our YouTube page, Freaknet Studios, so you guys get an update on when the videos are released, so you can check them out day of, you know. And obviously, you know, we love hearing from you guys, and if you've been to these cemeteries before, we love hearing stories. And we'll talk a little more about some of the sightings that people have seen at the cemetery in the part 2 that we're going to do, as well as showing you the location of the first burial at the cemetery, as well as the what was that thing called?
Monument? Burial plot?
Harrison's burial spot.
But his sort of presidential memorial.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you're going to see all that in part 2 and everything. And yeah, just make sure you click the notification bell and subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our show. Check out all the other shows on our network as well, and the other videos on our channel. We've got last year's cemetery tours, we've got eating challenges and tasting rankings, lots of cool content, and more to come.
Absolutely. So, guys, I am Travesty.
And I'm the Freak Joe.
And thank you for coming along with us on the Haunted Cemetery Tour of Indiana.